Hello and welcome back to another episode of Our Home Ground. I am again so excited to be here another week to talk all things women's footy and more today. There's going to be a little bigger conversation going on. I'm sure most of you can guess what that is based on what is happening in the world, but here we are. Yeah, today's episode is going to be like a hodgepodge of things. And so I hope it's interesting. I hope you enjoy it. It's just all kinds of things that are like on my mind. So let's just dive right in. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Women's FA Cup, which played over the weekend in England. It was the fifth round proper, and there were 8 games because it was the round of 16, which makes 8 games. Only 4 of said games were televised. And by televised, I mean like available to be watched live. So I don't know all of the details, and I am not like super closely following all of the different like media rights deals and all of that with all the different leagues because that's just like way too much for me. I don't know anything about any of that stuff. What I do know is that I think it's TNT, which is like, I don't actually know if that's like ITV or Sky Sports or whatever. It's Discovery Plus, so whatever that means, in the UK has the rights to the FA Cup. I believe it's both the men's and the women's FA Cup. So they get to decide what's televised. And if they choose not to televise it, they still have, my understanding at least, is they still have the media rights for the other games, which means that the other games cannot be shown live, even though they're not televising them. So, of the 8 games that played, only 4 of them were televised. The Saturday evening game, which was Birmingham City versus Chatham Town. That's an English word that I don't know how they pronounce that. Anyways, that was on Saturday. 2 of the Sunday games were televised, which was Chelsea versus Man United and Liverpool versus Everton. And then the Monday night game, London City Lionesses versus Tottenham Hotspur. Those were the 4 games that were televised. So you'll notice I didn't say anything about Arsenal. I didn't say anything about Man City. They both played. West Ham played Brighton as well. Arsenal had played Bristol City. City played Sheffield United. And then Oxford United played Charlton Athletic. None of those games were televised. I know for the Arsenal game, they did record it as though it was live. They had like a live announcer, maybe it was used for like radio or something. I genuinely don't know, but they released it on their website for a full rewatch the next day. So I was able to watch that game. But it's unfathomable to me that in 2026, there are still women's games, big clubs in the FA Cup, which is such a respected tournament, that there are still games that aren't televised live, like not accessible at all. And I know that there's a history in England with like blacking out certain times and things not being available on TV to encourage people to go to like local grassroots games. Like, I understand the concept. And I live in the United States and I can't go to any of the games. So I would like to watch the games. And quite frankly, I might have wanted to watch one of the games that had like lower tier teams because I never have access to them. So just the entire concept to me feels like, and I saw a lot of this on the internet too, where other people felt similarly, but like felt like we're setting the whole thing back 50 years where it's just not even accessible. And it's just, it feels really ridiculous to me that that's where we're at. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even like know what to say about the rest of that. It's just, it feels utterly ridiculous that it all comes down to like media rights and money at the end of the day. Like TNT didn't want anybody else making money on this. They weren't on YouTube. They were nowhere. And I know that this was an issue for previous rounds as well. And I didn't speak about it then. There's been a lot going on. There's been a lot of things to talk about. Not that it wasn't important then. It's not that it's only important because Arsenal was not on TV. I just think it's ridiculous. Like every game of the FA Cup at a certain point should be accessible on TV or on YouTube, or like all of these stadiums where these people are playing have the ability to produce these games and have them live. So, anyways, that's Thing number one that annoyed me over this past weekend, there were a few things that really annoyed me, but we'll just start there. One thing that I do want to bring up that is like so oddly specific, but that I thought would be an interesting thing to talk about today was Katie McCabe's locker room selfie that she shared on her Instagram and her latest dump that she posted. I just found it so interesting. So, as I said in a previous podcast episode, I had recently done an Emirates stadium tour. And one of the things that I noticed was that there was relatively limited mirror access. Granted, we couldn't go all the way everywhere in all the locker rooms, but in the main locker room, there's like one big mirror and it's big, but it's only, I would say, like maybe 3 feet wide. And when you have 22, 23 girls who need to do their hair before a game, like that's not that much space. I don't know if there are other mirrors like in the like toilet stall section, like we couldn't go back there, so I don't know. But the picture that Katie McCabe shared was not in the Emirates. I'm assuming it was in Bournemouth or maybe one of the other facilities that they had played at in the past block. But it was a picture of all of these women huddled trying to use this like one mirror to do their hair. They're all working on their like slick backs. Steph Catley's in it, Alessia Russo, Leah Cadena, Chloe Kelly, all trying to get their hair right. Kyra is just like standing there looking. But I just find it so interesting because that was a thought that I had when I was at the Emirates of like, do they all just like huddle together to each do their hair? Do they have a hair rotation? Like, does everybody have like a designated time? And who goes first? All of that. I have so many questions. And though Katie Selby certainly doesn't answer those questions for me, it at least provides like a little bit of insight of like, yeah, they do all kind of just huddle around like me and my friends did in high school, trying to use this shared space. And it just brings it back that like they're just girls and they're all just in this small locker room trying to get their hair done, trying to do their own hair. I just found it so fascinating and like a little glimpse in the like behind the scenes of how this stuff functions because when I think of it, I think of it as this like glamorous isn't like, I don't mean glamorous as far as like makeup and all that kind of stuff, but I just think of it as being like more elevated, I think, than what it actually is. Like the reality is there were like seven girls huddled together, all trying to do their hair, probably elbowing each other, probably sharing hairbrushes. Like who knows? I've crafted this whole story in my head about what it's actually like based on this picture from Katie. And it's like not that far off from what I thought in a way that I don't love. Like it feels a little bit like they should have more space, they should have more mirror space, but like what can you do? That's the reality of the situation. So thank you, Katie McCabe, for giving us the little like sneak peek into that because it's something that I have thought about. I don't know if anyone else in the whole world has ever thought about that, but I have. And so I was really happy to have that piece of information. Next thing I want to talk about is over the weekend, Bayern played Wolfsburg. Bayern ended up winning the game 4-1 after going into halftime down 1-0. So they had a big second half. I was not able to watch that game. I actually didn't watch any matches over the weekend for the first time in a really, really long time that there were like games available and I wasn't watching. So I think that was good for me to like prioritize. I had family in town. I was visiting with them, and I think that was a really important thing for me to do. But it was just felt a little weird to think about how I was going to do this podcast having not watched any games. I did watch the Arsenal game yesterday, but that's not what we're talking about today. So I did not watch the Bayern versus Wolfsburg game, but I did see that it was posted that 2.39 million viewers tuned in to watch that game. And that is so impressive that almost 2.5 million people were watching this women's game. Yes, Bayern and Wolfsburg are rivals, so it was like a derby. Very exciting game to watch. But I just think that's so exciting that so many people are tuning in to watch the women's game. It's just so cool. I also did see that one of the TV analysts, I guess, in the UK shared that the Lionesses final against Spain was the most viewed TV event in all of 2025 in the UK, more than Traders, more than like literally anything else. That final was the most viewed. Think I don't remember the number. It was like 15 million, I think. I should have looked it up. But like just these viewership numbers, people are locked in. People want to watch women's sports. People want access to women's sports. Think of all of these viewers who love the Lionesses, who might have wanted to watch the FA Cup this weekend. I don't know, just a concept. But as the shirt that I'm wearing says, everyone watches women's sports. And that will continue to be a theme that we'll come back to in just a moment. But before we get to that, another thing that's going on this week that's been a cool sort of like pop culture football crossover is that it's London Fashion Week. I don't actually know the exact dates of London Fashion Week. I just know the girls have been out and about. They have been showing up and they have been throwing fits. Do the kids even say that anymore? I don't actually know. I don't know how to speak about fashion properly, but what I do know is that Chloe Kelly has been out and about and her outfits are always so cool. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she pulls them off, but they are gorgeous every time. So, would highly suggest you go take a look at her Instagram. I know for sure she was at the British Vogue by GQ Fashion night out and popped off with that outfit. There's another outfit of her in like a black little mini dress that is so cool. These cool embellishments on it. Anyways, like I said, I don't know exactly how to talk about these things, but Chloe Kelly really just nailing it when she popped off or popped out or showed out, whatever, a few times this week. So that was really cool to see these women like out in the culture in the media. Leah Williamson and Alex Scott were also at British Vogue by GQ Fashion, which incredible. They always look so cool. Leah's been out and about in like these brown leather pants. I don't know if she wore two different pair of brown leather pants or if it was the same pair of leather pants with a different shirt, or maybe if it was the same night and she took off the jacket. That I'm not exactly sure. Clearly, I don't know her schedule. I just know that she looked so cool. So she went to the British Vogue by GQ fashion event as well. And then she also went to the Burberry show. And at one of these places, she took a picture. I think it was at the British Vogue situation. She ran into Olivia Dean and took a picture with her, which was all over the internet. I had about four different people send it to me and tell me that my two worlds were colliding, which is true. We haven't talked about Olivia Dean and her crossover with soccer yet on this podcast, but she is a football fan. She is from the UK, so as an American, that feels very unsurprising to me that she follows football. But she is a West Ham fan and she has been seen at multiple men's games. She has yet to be at a women's game, but Fionn Morgan, oh, and somebody else. And now I can't remember who she made the video with. Anyways, Fionn Morgan and one of her teammates who also plays for West Ham made a video inviting Olivia Dean to come to a women's game. And there's like a video of her watching the video and like reacting to it, just being so excited and just like seemed to like not be able to believe that they knew who she was. And it's like, you're Olivia Dean. I do know that she is performing a lot. She's traveling. She's going on tour soon. So I don't know if she'll be able to make it out to a women's game. I hope she does. But seeing the Leah Williamson, Olivia Dean photo together is so cool because Leah Williamson has also been very outspoken about how influential Olivia Dean has been on their music selection as of late, that they're all just listening to Olivia Dean, that she's on the pre-match playlist, the like strength and conditioning playlist that they have. Like she's in there. So just so cool that they were together. And then another one that I saw, I'm sure others were out. I know Lauren James went to a show, but I now don't remember that off the top of my head, and I didn't look it up before this. Sorry, it's been a bit of a chaotic week. But Lucy Bronze, Jojo, Rytting, Kaneryd, and Natalie Bjorn attended the Louis Vuitton show, and Lucy Bronze posted about it on her Instagram. Again, they all looked so cool. Lucy Bronze's fashion is also so cool. I think she has a little bit what feels a little bit more accessible. I say that as she's at the Louis Vuitton fashion show. Like, how could you call that accessible? It's not. To be clear, she is a professional footballer who has a fashion wardrobe, I don't know, outfit selection that is absolutely not accessible to me, and that's okay. She has earned it. No shade there. But her fashion sense feels a little bit more like recreatable with things that are not designer in a way that like I think Chloe Kelly's would be a lot harder to do. I think Leah's sometimes is a lot harder to do as well, but Lucy's feels a little more tangible or accessible, and maybe that's because of some of the collabs she's in with Align that yes are still expensive because they are like elevated pieces, but they're not the same price as these sort of like big designer Louis Vuitton, Burberry type things. But it's been so fun to see the girls at the events posting pictures, just like out and about in London, doing cool pop culture stuff, being in the rooms with cool people. So that's been really fun to see. And I just think having the opportunity to do those things is relatively new in the women's game. Clearly still not accessible for everyone. Those are the huge lionesses that I have named: Chloe Kelly, Leah Williamson, Alex Scott, Lucy Bronze, who brought her two Swedish best friends from Chelsea. Like, I just think it's amazing and I'm really, really excited for them. So that's great news. Last sort of women's soccer, women's footy update that I want to talk about today is just brief injury update on two players. Ella Toone, she had some sort of like hip stress injury and she is back on the pitch. She has her boots back on. She's out running on the grass. She is still, I would imagine, quite far off from any return to play, but she's back on the grass with her football boots on for the first time in a very long time. So that's really exciting. The other player who has an injury update is Aitana Bonmatí. She is also back with her boots on, running on the grass. Again, no evidence that she has a ball at her feet yet or anything, but she had that broken foot that I believe required surgery. She is back in a football boot. She has expressed how excited she is about that. And so that's very, very exciting. It will be good for the women's game, for the game broadly, to have those two back playing soccer. So that's very exciting. Another injury update that just popped into my mind that I want to also bring up is Kadeisha Buchanan, who plays for Chelsea. She made her return after it was like 450 days or something to that effect, a long time, over a year by a pretty significant margin. She made her return over the weekend in the FA Cup when they played Man United. She had played in like an under 23s, under 21s, maybe. I think it was under 21s probably game earlier in the week, and then she did make an appearance in their FA Cup game. So very exciting to see some of these women return from injury. This is a theme that I want to bring into next week's episode. I haven't had time to watch the whole thing. I did see a few clips from Leah Williamson's press conference that she did arriving at England camp today. I haven't had a chance to watch the whole thing, so I don't want to talk about it yet. I'm definitely going to talk about it on next week's episode because I think there's a lot to talk about there. She was asked questions about like the schedule and injuries because this is her first Lioness camp back since the Euros, since she had to have knee surgery after the Euros. And then she was also talked about the fact that they're having to play their game against the Ukraine, which is supposed to be a home game for the Ukraine in Turkey because obviously with the war, it's not safe in the Ukraine. And so I do want to talk about some of those things and some perceptions that people have shared on the internet that I'm not sure are true about Leah and her sort of political involvement. But I haven't had time to watch the whole press conference, and so I want to make sure that I do that and not just talk about these clips like taken out of context and not give them proper. So I guess there's a sneak peek of next week's episode. The last thing I want to talk about on this week's episode is something that I'm really not excited to have to talk about, but it is the US men's hockey team and what happened at the Olympics after they won gold. So I do very much recognize that this is not about women's soccer, but it is about women's sports. And I do think that this kind of thing has a huge impact on women in sports, women in society, all of it. That's my major argument surrounding this. So bear with me. If you haven't seen what happened, because maybe you aren't American or you haven't, I don't know, just like seen it. On, I believe it was Thursday, the US women's hockey team played Canada in the gold medal match and won. US women's hockey team won 2-1 in overtime. Golden goal, goals by Hilary Knight, and then the golden goal by Megan Keller. So they win gold on Thursday. Very exciting. The US men's team, provides some support, is excited, all of those things. The men's team goes on to play Canada on Sunday in the gold medal match. Many of the women's team players are in the audience. They are cheering them on. The men have been talking highly of them in these sort of public appearances that they're making. The US men's team goes on to beat Canada, I believe 2-1 also in overtime with a golden goal. Jack Hughes scoring the golden goal. He chipped his teeth in the middle of the game, goes back out, continues to play, all of that. So everybody's excited. We have this like US won gold in both the men's and the women's. This is so exciting. Jack Hughes does an interview after, and it looked like it was like a mixed zone interview. Someone asked him, like, what did you think of? Who did you think of when, you scored that goal? And he was like, I mean, oddly enough, I thought of Megan Keller and how she had scored the game-winning goal, and then I scored it. And so it's like, oh my God, this is so amazing, so supportive. This is so great. A little bit of backstory on the Hughes brothers is their mother used to play for the US women's hockey team and is now one of the assistant coaches for the US women's hockey team. So very cool that she's there coaching, her sons are there playing, like incredible, okay? Everybody's like, this is great. There's been a lot of controversy in the NHL around their support of LGBTQ plus. They have removed Pride nights. They have banned their players from using any tape on their sticks that is rainbow, like all of this. So the NHL, not great in terms of support of the LGBTQ plus community. Then Heated Rivalry comes out. Then they're trying to like profit off that. So then they start bringing Pride stuff back. The Hughes brothers are often asked about this. Jack Hughes plays, I believe, for a team in New Jersey because I saw an interview with him saying, like, oh, in New Jersey, we understand we have a very diverse audience, fan base. And so we recognize how important it is to allow players to have, pride tape on their sticks and all of that. Like, we think that's really important and great. People are like, oh my gosh, the Hughes brothers, are they like a little bit, like supportive? Like, everyone has assumed, at least, that they are supportive of at least the LGBTQ plus community and maybe are with their mom situation, like potentially the way that he was talking about Megan Keller. We're like, okay, these are like good guys. Well, in the locker room, and a lot of this has to do with like US politics. And so I'm not going to go into all of it, but you can look it all up if you want to and find out all this information. So they go into the locker room after doing all their media stuff. They go into the locker room to celebrate winning a gold medal, as they should. They should celebrate. Please do not misunderstand. They won gold. That's freaking incredible. Still is incredible. Good for them. Nobody is questioning their hockey playing ability. They beat Canada. Congratulations. They go into the locker room and they invite the director of the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, which is an appointed position by the president. They invite Kash Patel, who is the current FBI director, into the locker room to celebrate with them. When they do that, or somehow in this process, one of the players goes live on Instagram. This is not new territory. Many players go live on Instagram during celebrations after winning things. Well, Kash Patel is on the phone with Donald Trump, the current president of the United States. And the State of the Union is on Tuesday night in the US, Tuesday the 24th. This is like a whole thing where the president like gives a speech in front of all of Congress. It's like a whole very like ceremonial thing in the United States. So President Trump invites, he says, I want you guys to be there for my State of the Union on Tuesday. And then he goes on to say something to the effect of, but, I'm going to have to also invite the women's team. And he's like, yeah, because, if I don't, then I'll get impeached. And everyone laughs. And so it goes from 5 minutes ago, maybe 10 minutes ago, Jack Hughes saying, the first person I thought of was the other women's player who scored the goal, them publicly supporting the women's team, to being in a room full of men, exclusively men, laughing at and mocking the US women's hockey team, who also won a gold medal, with their friends and what they perceive to be privacy. This was all live streamed on Instagram, is my understanding of how we got this video. Whatever, we have the video of it. And sure, we could go on a whole diatribe of US politics. But that's, for me, a side part of this. And they're tied together. What I'm about to say is tied to the US politics of it all. So you can't completely separate them. But for me, it's this complete disrespect and disvaluing of the women's team. By them all laughing at Donald Trump's joke that, oh, I have to invite the women's team or I'll get impeached, saying that he has no respect or interest in inviting the women's team for achieving the exact same thing that the men's team achieved, the reason why he's inviting them, that somehow the women are less deserving. And so I'm actually just going to read something that I wrote about it because I think I articulated it well there. And I don't want to go on a bunch of tangents here because I will, because I'm furious. So I'm just going to read what I wrote. So I said, I have a lot of thoughts about the locker room video of the US men's hockey team celebrating with Kash Patel and Donald Trump via phone. Rightfully so, a lot of focus has gone to the mockery and disvaluing of the US women's hockey team by President Trump when he said that he'll have to invite the women's team along too or get impeached, as if they were somehow less deserving of being invited. Okay, we already talked about that part. And the responses have been eye-opening for me. Outrage from men and women alike has taken over my feed, which, as a former female athlete, I really appreciated on the surface. But something hasn't sat quite right with me. Most of the rhetoric has revolved around how the women's team is incredibly decorated, the individuals are hardworking, and that the team is arguably more successful than the men's team. Therefore, they deserve to be respected as equals. Though all of those things may be true, I think we're missing the whole point. Women should not have to prove to men that they're worth being valued. If that's the case, then there is always another yardstick. The goalpost can always be moved. Women should be respected simply for existing. That's it. There's no worth that needs to be proven. No one should need to detail the fact that the women have won 3 gold medals since the men last won a gold. We don't need to explain that the women have medaled in every Olympics since women's hockey has been introduced to the Olympics. Nor should we need to remind them that the men were publicly praising these women moments before going into that locker room. Though all of these things are true, they shouldn't be relevant. Women deserve to be respected simply for existing. But that has been the feminist argument all along. Women deserve respect simply because we exist. Yet, we see one of the most powerful men in the world disvalue and disrespect the gold medal winning US women's hockey team in a room full of men, where not a single one spoke up in defense of the women. In private, men continue to participate in, or at the very least, allow others to participate in, the systemic disvaluing of women. If women aren't fundamentally respected for existing, then there's very little chance that any accomplishment will ever be enough. The most unfortunate part of it all is that no woman I've spoken to is surprised by what happened. We all know this happens, but it really sucks to see it displayed so clearly. Certainly, it's not all men, but it is enough men who laugh along as to not ruin the moment, or keep quiet to not rock the boat, or make others feel uncomfortable, or simply remain silent because they don't agree. To be clear, this is not a women's issue. This is men having an issue with women. Until men are ready to hold each other accountable, make men feel uncomfortable for making sexist jokes, comments, or remarks, and stand up for women in rooms like that locker room, nothing will change. I feel like I articulated my thoughts clearly there, but it's just absolutely infuriating that this isn't surprising. And that's the part that I keep coming back to. is no matter what these men say in public, men we know, men we don't know, there's always that feeling of like, yeah, but what are they saying when we're not there, when we're not in the room, when there is no sort of like performative element, when they feel as though they're in a quote safe space around only other men. What what I'm begging for, I guess, is for men to not allow other men to feel safe saying sexist things around them. Because until that happens, nothing will change. So long as men feel safe being sexist against women around other men, they'll continue doing it. And so I just think that this is a clear example, but a microcosm of this much bigger issue. And although, like I said, this doesn't directly involve women's soccer, it clearly involves women's sports and it involves the way that men's sports perceive women's sports, right? No matter if you achieve the same thing as them, it is somehow less valuable simply because you're a woman. And I just, you'd think in 2026 would be past this, but we're not. And like I said, it's incredibly tied to the US political system, to the broader global political system, the way that we view and treat women globally, like it's all interconnected. And this on the sports stage was just like a super clear show of it. And I think part of what's so devastating about it to me is I had such a like warm and happy feeling about sport following the Olympics because I think there's this level of camaraderie, even amongst people from different countries that exists in the Olympics, that makes you feel warm and fuzzy in a way that I don't feel with other things. But it's like people are genuinely celebrating each other for achieving their dreams. Like I think it was the men's big air skiing where the American went second to last. Forehand is his last name. I can't think of his first name. I'm going rogue here. Went and he like threw a trick that he had never even attempted in his life. He landed it, set a new record for high score at the Olympics in this event. And then the next person went down. I believe he was from Norway and landed a trick that then set the bar even higher for the highest score ever scored at an Olympics. And then they all just celebrated together because if I've thrown a trick that I've never even attempted before and landed it and you did something better, then you're better on this day. And that deserves to be celebrated. We're setting records together, we're pushing each other to be better, and it just is so cool. And we saw that kind of stuff everywhere. We saw Alyssa Liu celebrating with the bronze medalist in the women's free skate, I think. Sorry, I'm not an avid follower of skiing, nor snowboarding, nor figure skating. So sorry if I'm getting any of this wrong. But like we saw this genuine celebration of when the skater found out that she placed third, like Alyssa Liu going over there and just like celebrating with her and being so happy. And it's just incredible. And so I was on this sort of like Olympic high. And then this happened with the US men's hockey team. This was like one of the very last events before the closing ceremonies. This was one of the very last events of the entire Olympic Games. And for it to like end like this feels gross. I don't know. I'm really disappointed about the disenfranchisement of women's sports that we saw over the weekend, the disrespect to women, all of it between the FA Cup and then the US men's hockey team. I'm like, over it. But it's important to talk about. It's important to bring light to these things. The more we talk about it, the better chance we have of changing something. But again, men respecting women is not a women's issue. Men respecting women is a men's issue. And they need to hold each other accountable because there's nothing else that we as women can do that we haven't already done. We need to keep doing the things. I'm not saying get complacent and just let it go, but there's nothing else that we could do. So we need to convince other men. Mm, I don't even like that because that's saying that we can have an influence on this. Other men need to step up and defend us in those kinds of rooms because that's where the real change will happen. Okay, I think that's all I have to say today. Not a very happy episode. We did have some cool Wins fashion stuff, so that's exciting. We did have some viewership, really impressive numbers. That's exciting. So I'm not saying that all hope is lost, and I feel very sad and like destitute. I don't even know if that's the right word. I don't even know if that is a word. Anyways, I'm losing my mind. But all of that to say, I'm not giving up. And I will continue watching women's sports. I will continue showing up and supporting other women in all of the ways that I can. And I hope that everyone else does too. And I'll be here every week talking about it. So if you made it this far, thank you. So happy to have you every time. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but engage with me because I just keep talking to myself. So, would love to hear what you guys think about all these things. And then I'll be here next week and we will talk about Leah's press conference and then see what else transpires over the week. So I hope everybody has a great week and I'll catch you next time.